initially. More memory goes up, you have to take this from that. You have to do this rule, that rule. Okay, all right.
Okay, shall we start? Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So, continuing with the a bird's eye view of the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita before we go into much more detail on the 7th chapter, which will happen in a few days. So continuing with that, just wanted to go over to just review the structure of the Bhagavad Gita and also go into more detail on the 4th chapter. As you know, that last week we did chapters 1, 2, and 3, and today I think we'll have enough time to do number 4, and possibly we might have time to do meditation depending on how quickly we go through this, and then go through number 5 and 6 next week perhaps, and then we'll be ready for number 7. So that's what I want to do. So we have seen that the first chapter of the Gita is to establish the context of the teaching. So this we saw last week. The context being that the person who is qualified to study the Bhagavad Gita is a good person, is an ethical person, and one who takes responsibility for the life, doesn't cut corners, and is an accomplished person. So this is the student for the Bhagavad Gita. If one is not any one of these, then you're wasting your time. You should do something else. So this is the context. And so we saw that Arjuna represents the student well. He is a good person, he's an accomplished person, he's a serious person, he wants to learn, and he wants to learn comes a little later. So that comes in a little bit later, but at least the preparation for the person is there in the personality of Arjuna. Then he has a kind of like a nervous breakdown, because he was able to take care of all of the issues of his life up to that point, but it comes to an impasse where he has to make some major decisions in his life about whether he should continue to fight and therefore injure or kill his own cousins and teachers and so on the other side, or not. So this was the conflict between dharma and an attachment, which is one of the highest types of conflicts anybody can come through. You can think about, supposing you have a son or a daughter or somebody very close to you who has done something seriously wrong. And now the question is whether you should turn them in or not. It's something like that, so something very serious. So anyway, so that was one part of the chapter number 1. Then the second part of the chapter 1 was that he also did not sorry.
No, it's
Is it on? Something is not on?
go ahead.
Just the volume
Just the
perhaps?
volume.
The second part of his of the chapter 1 was, which is now going into chapter 2, the first 10 verses of the chapter 2 is that he was not ready to seek advice yet. So the first chapter is Arjuna Shoka Yoga, Vilasa Yoga, where he's crying and he's emoting and all of those kinds of things are happening, but he is not ready to seek guidance. But then he finally sees that here is a person who is capable of teaching me. He's a well-recognized person, considered to be godly in his views. And he said, I need to really talk to you, and I need your advice. So the second part of that is a submission. This is kind of like sometimes, you figure out that you have a disease of some kind, and then you feel, no, I think I can do it on my own. And when you can't, you have to go to a doctor and say, you know what, I give up. You needn't help me. So this submission was the second part of the first chapter. Then the teaching starts on the 11th verse of the second chapter, as you know. I'm just revising. And the second chapter with the teaching starts with a complete overview of what one's life looks like. And what it looks like for us, for this should be common to all of us, because we are all the same human beings, similar human beings, is that we have two powers at our disposal. One is the power to do, and the other one is the power to know. These are the two main powers. And then there's also a subsidiary power which is given to human beings, which is what is called Ichha Shakti. Ichha Shakti means the power to desire. And so what that means is, and so the power to desire can be directed to either the power to do or to power to know. And in fact, the social infrastructure which the Hindus are sometimes accused of in the four types of human beings is really based on this. So you have Brahmanaha, Kshatriyaha, Vaishyaha, and Shudraha. And so it is a stratification of these three Shaktis. One is the power to know, one is the power to do, the power to desire. And what it means is that the most important, potent Shakti we have is the power to know. And knowledge is the greatest power there is. Doing things is also powerful, but depends on what you want to do. So this was the structure that is permeating through the very teaching of the Bhagavad Gita. What it says is that for wisdom, you should do things that contribute towards your final liberation, your ultimate liberation. You should invest your actions towards liberation. You should invest it rather than spend it. And what we tend to do when we are not wise is to spend our energy to do things for limited gains. And that's okay. It is kind of like, supposing you have a serious disease and you're going to a doctor and the doctor tells you that this is going to take a little while to cure. This is not going to happen overnight. But the doctor also recognizes that there could be some symptomatic relief in the meantime. It's not means that, like supposing you have some serious headache type of issues, then you need to take some aspirin just so that you can relieve the immediate symptoms, even though you haven't solved the disease yet. So that part is okay, but the real usage of karma should be for eventual freedom from all problems, which is possible. The problem is we don't think that's possible. This is the fundamental issue of ignorance. But once we find out it is possible, that's why they say that really the real challenge of learning Vedanta comes after the introduction is over. You know what needs to be done, but now you have to change the entire machinery of your life to transform your life. It's not easy. And it shouldn't be, because, this is a huge win for everybody if you can do so. So anyway, so this is why in the very beginning it is important to know that the gaining of liberation is of the type of praptasya prapti. This is a very important thing to see. And so, and sometimes Bhagavad Gita is such a lengthy treatise that this fact is not immediately visible to you. This is why a guru is necessary, that summarizes the very basis, the basic essence of the Bhagavad Gita. Because otherwise it looks like, chapter 1, chapter 2, there's discussion, and this is going to come up in chapter 4, so I'm going to not go into it very much. But anyway, that's one of the points, is that the role of karma in the life as praptasya prapti is a very important one. Because once you know that you already have it, then the type of karma that you do will be totally different from the type of karma that you will do when you don't know what you have. This is the essence of the teaching to Arjuna, as we will see that again. So, there in the 3rd chapter we saw, which was the last chapter that we saw before we move on to new material, is Krishna telling Arjuna that you need to use your power to do in such a way that it is contributory to your power to know. See, that's the same example that I gave you when I lost my credit card, or I thought I lost my credit card. And what it was that what will relieve me from my anxiety was to find the credit card. Nothing short of that would really, until you have it in your pocket, you're never going to feel relieved. But once you know it's around me, it's not lost, then the karma is a relaxed karma. It is definitely there. I still have to find out where it is, but it is relaxed. I know it is there. There is no anxiousness in the karma, anxiousness for results. This changes the attitude of karma completely in our life. If you know that you are well taken care of, that really, in fact, your sense of freedom is your own nature, then the sense of relaxation in doing things in your life is totally different. Totally different. Now, this part was not clear to the student, Arjuna. So, Krishna was telling him that, as I was saying earlier, that there are two powers given to you, two powers to do and two power to know. And the power to know is the more superior one, is the more powerful one. And Krishna and Arjuna is listening to all this. At the end of it, Krishna says, so now, Arjuna, take up your arms and fight. This confused Arjuna completely. You are asking me that jnanam is superior, and yet you are engaging me in the karma. This is confusing to me. Don't you want the best thing for me? Am I not your friend? Then why are you doing it this? You're telling this is superior, but I want you to go in the other direction. So this is an important thing. We were just discussing it in the class. It's finished also. A very basis of knowledge is the eligibility of the student. And so, if it is a subtle knowledge, then, like we have often given the example of the principle of atomic physics, which is E is equal to mc squared, that energy and matter are interchangeable. We know that. At least we are told that. We may not understand it. You cannot teach that to a kindergarten student. It would make no sense whatsoever. You may not even teach it to a high school student. It requires a certain level of understanding before it becomes even a subject that is to be debated on, to be talked about. Even to do that, I don't know if I told you this or not, but I think I may have told you this. When I was doing my master's in Berkeley on computer science, I was on the lesson, the plan. They had two plans. One was a research plan, and the other one was straight, even at the master's level, just a coursework. So I was just doing coursework. Then at the last minute, my advisor told me that, there's an interesting project that has come along, and I know it'll require you to study another semester, but it'll be you should look into that, do some research on it. So I said, fine. So I was attached to Dr. Donald Glaser, who's he won a Nobel Prize for the bubble chamber, a physicist, and he was a big guy in the campus. So my advisor said, I can recommend you work with him for a while. So I said, wonderful. I started doing to his classes. And just to get myself acquainted, I went to some of his advanced physics classes, which I knew I'm not going to understand. But how much I will not understand was not clear to me until I started to go to his classes. The language they used, the sophisticated dialogue was all over my head. I could not get any one part of it. And I was already 23 and having a master's degree and so on. But because I was not equipped to understand physics, so I just quit going to his classes. And then he just advised me on this project, and that was wonderful. So the knowledge means the eligibility of the student. So the reason that Krishna was telling Arjuna that please fight is to tell him you are not ready for knowledge. And Arjuna said, you're saying meditation and wonderful and jnanam, I just want to do that. I don't want to fight with this. This is not what I want to do. I'm killing people and hurting people and so on. That's not what I want to do. I just want to relax and I've gotten it now. Krishna was telling him, my dear friend, this is not going to work. Why not? Because even if you are going to Rishikesh and you are just doing meditation, your mind will still be here. You'll still be thinking, I wonder what's going on back there. It's not going to work. You've been trained to be a warrior, and your thinking is not going to change overnight. So I have a recipe for you. I know Jnanam is the best thing for you, but please make sure that you are prepared for it. And one of the things you should do is whatever the dharma is, whatever is required under your circumstances, you have to fulfill it. You cannot shirk your duty. So this is the dialogue that takes place. But here, both karma and jnanam are at the disposal of each one of us, and we have to use the right mix of them in order for us to understand. This is something we'll talk more and more about. So what it means is that if you want to understand absolute love, absolute freedom, absolute liberation, you must at least be aware of relative love, relative freedom, relative, all these kinds of things. You have to soften up your mind a little bit. You cannot go from having a selfishness attitude towards yourself and not caring about anyone else, and all of a sudden to grasp the very true meaning of it, even though you're hearing it, not going to happen. So the karma has to be used in the direction of yoga. So this was talked about quite a bit in the third chapter. So the third chapter is a treatise on karma to be used as a yoga. And so we saw some elements of it, how that was to be done, and so on and so forth. So of course, those will be revisited later on. Now, chapters 4, 5, and 6 is now putting the focus on knowledge, not on karma. So this is what is called Jnana Yoga and not Karma Yoga. So if we do that, there are 3 stages of gaining knowledge. And all of these 3 stages are explained quite well in chapters 4, 5, and 6. And these 3 stages are, so one thing, one preface of going to the Jnana Yoga is to see Jnanam as a yoga. Just like we saw karma also as a yoga. Yoga means essentially the means of gaining total freedom in my life from all problems. This is what yoga really means. It's the common element in all of these teachings. So the question is, just like we saw karma also as a yoga, Jnanam can also be seen as a yoga. Because, like for instance, I'll give you this view of it. Knowledge can be misused to increase your importance in life. And we all do that. we become very knowledgeable about, we become experts in things. And we feel good about it. People come to us and say, I understand you are an expert in this, so on and so forth. Can you please help me with this? And people even charge money for it. They are experts in a given field. This is not using jnanam as a yoga. It also means academic study. That I have done PhD in this, then I've done PhD in that, I've done masters in this, and I know these many languages, and so on and so forth, and therefore I'm an important person, I'm a big person. This is not the yoga, this is not jnanam for the yoga. Your sharpness, your ability to understand and to analyze and so on has to be utilized in a way for you to gain ultimate freedom, not relative freedom. That means the jnanam as a yoga. Okay, so I want to make that point. So having said that, then, as I mentioned, there are 3 stages to gaining a knowledge about the self. This is a very not an easy thing to do, but we must resolve ourselves that this is what I want to do. And if you do, then there are 3 stages to it. The first stage is what is given in. So this is not exclusively given in chapter 4, but the focus on the first stage is on chapter 4. Relative focus on the second stage is chapter 5, and the relative focus on the third stage is chapter 6. This is how it is structured, 4, 5, and 6. Okay. The first stage is what is called Shravanam. So the 3 are Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. And I have them, I'll go through each one of them shortly. So Shravanam means, what exactly are you supposed to know? What is it that I don't know? What are you talking about? And as we saw in the last class also, the whole issue is that you are missing some important elements about yourself that changes your entire attitude towards life. You've forgotten to account for an asset that you have. This is what is called praptasya prapti. You have what it takes to be happy, you just don't know it. So this is called Shravanam, means someone has to, the Shravanam in the case of finding out the credit card was the knowledge that I have it in the house. That would be called a Shravanam in that case. So in our case, the Shravanam would be an authoritative, convincing case that your happiness is within you. It's not clear to us. Not at all clear to us. This has to be made clear, and this case has to be made by resorting to understanding and listening and so on and so forth. This constitutes Shravanam. So this is primarily the focus of the chapter 4, and not the entire chapter, because one of the things that the Bhagavad Gita does is it focuses on some main topics, and it also presents some subsidiary topics that are related to it, but they are not the main topic. So the Shravanam I believe chapter 4 has, I think, 39 verses, if I recall. And the Shravanam, the knowledge, is given from verses 18 to 24 only. These are important verses. And they were given earlier in the second chapter as an introduction from verse number 12 to 25 in the second chapter. Those are given again as a focus on 18 to 24 on the fourth chapter. And then later on it doesn't come as clearly. This is what the important one is, number 4. And we'll go into some elements of that even today, but I just want to give you an overall fact. In chapter 5, is focused on the second stage, which is called Mananam. So Mananam means an analysis of what is the Shravanam. Because what the Shravanam will tell you is something opposite to what our conclusion is. Our conclusion in our life is that happiness is outside of me. I have to acquire it. And I'm not sure what the role of Ishvara, of God, is. I don't see God anywhere. I don't know what my future holds. All of that I have to do. And therefore, I have to resort to various actions to acquire happiness. This is what my conclusion is. Vedanta comes up and he says, not really true. The more you look for things, the less you're going to find it because it is already in your pocket. And so the Shravanam seems very, I wouldn't say strange, but very contradictory to my own experiences. My experience is that I am occasionally happy, often unhappy. Swami Dayanand used to say that. He says our analysis is dukkha, 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 sukha, sukha, dukkha, 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 sukha, dukkha, 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 sukha. Is what it is. In fact, it's very interesting. Swami Maheshananji's analysis of this is very similar to Swami Dayanandji. Those two are my main teachers in my life. And Swami Maheshananji also says, I think he was analyzing this same thing about the dukkha and sukha. He says that even the sukha in life, sukha means a sense of happiness, relief, is really to continue with my samsara. Even the little bit of sukha is there that I keep going and I don't commit suicide. I have hope in the future. Something will happen. Anyway, I don't want to go into too much of this. Right now, the Shravanam is contradictory to my experience. And the Shastra knows this. It's not a surprise. It says it's going to happen. When I tell you something which is contradictory to your experiences, you will question it. Is this really true? And then what I want you to do is, here are the ways to analyze and close the gap between your experience and what I am telling you. This is called Mananam. So Mananam means to think, to reconcile. And the Shastra doesn't leave you helpless, that you figure it out. No. It says these are the kind of questions your mind will ask. And by the way, here's a guide on how you should. This is all about your own self, not about any academic things. So even the help for Mananam is given by the Shastra for your own good. Anyway, that constitutes the second stage, which is focus of chapter number 5. Once you have done so, then comes the third stage, which is the assimilation of the fruits of knowledge. And this is not automatic. It takes a while. Swami Paramarthananda had given this beautiful example from his Paramarthananda from Chennai, also a great teacher, wonderful person. What he said was that when you are hungry, then having a lunch is just the start, or dinner or something, having food. That doesn't benefit you. What benefits you is assimilating the food. Yes, of course you have to eat and so on. And it quenches the immediate thirst or hunger. But really speaking, the body has to now absorb it. And it isn't until it does that you are ready to have the results of eating. Similarly is the case here, that mananam and shravanam are like eating, but they haven't been digested yet. And you have to spend time digesting it. And then will comes. And so oftentimes people will say, I've been studying Vedanta for a long time and nothing is happening to me. It is because it could be either your shravanam is not complete, or your mananam is not complete, or you've been too hasty. Let it soak in. Think about it. Because what happens is, so these are also known methods. What happens is that your own conclusion that I'm limited, I'm sorrowful and so on, those have been impressions from a long time. And all of a sudden you have this new knowledge that I am not limited, I am okay, my happiness is within me and so on. It's not going to suddenly happen. You have to give it, it's kind of like a scale, the old style scale, where you have, like a 5-pound something sitting on this side, and you're weighing some vegetables on the other side, or dal or something like this. And so it's crooked like this. And then you start putting some more vegetables or dals, and then it starts to go this way. This is exactly the same way. Right now, the weight of your wrong thinking is so much that it takes a while for the right thinking to have an effect. So this is what is called nididhyasanam, and that is given in chapter 6. Okay? So this is the structure of 4, 5, and 6. Now let us go into the details of chapter 4. And chapter 4 is called Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga. Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga, which means that the right proportion and the right method of doing karma and jnanam, which will allow you to become directed towards the assets that you have rather than the assets that you think you have. Sannyasa. So sannyasa means, so this word sannyasa is an important one, and I think we will go into more details about this. So sannyasa means the ability of other things ceasing to bother you. just to be oblivious of things. It's okay. It doesn't matter to me. The reason we are unhappy is because things matter to us. I want things to be in a given way. This is the way it should be. And if it doesn't, then I'm upset. And so this is what happens. The wisdom comes in understanding that things really don't matter as much as I think I did, or that I used to think. This is called sannyasa. This is called sannyasa. We were just taking this example in the earlier class today, that supposing you are a house owner and you have all the headaches of owning the home, and you're worried about it. You're paying mortgage payments and upkeep, and there are rats and deer and all. This is real. This is my householdership. This is exactly not the mortgage that's been paid off, but the rats and deer are attacking us all every day. So then a person says, you know what? I want to just turn this house over to a charitable organization. And I am no longer so you just present the whole thing to someone. And now you don't worry about mortgage payments. You don't worry about rats. You don't worry about deer eating your flowers. You ask, somebody else is discussing it, we have got a repainting all job to do. You don't worry about it. Why? Because your identification as the owner of the house is now over. This is called sannyasa. And so this discussion in the chapter 4 is, what does it mean in my life? How do I achieve it? And so on. That's the reason for this. Chapter 4 has 3 main topics and several subsidiary topics. But the 3 main topics are the following. One is called Avatara Rahasyam, and I will go and explain what that is in a minute. The second one is the main one. It's called Jnana Yoga, as I have been discussing. And the third one is called Jnana Sadhanani, which means the means are always talked about. So the Bhagavad Gita doesn't leave you high and dry. You go, you figure it out. This is the truth about it and don't bother me. No. Here is what you need to know, sadhya, and here's how you get to know it, sadhana. Both are. So as we have discussed it before, each of the chapters is called Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastra. So Brahma Vidya is the sadhya and Yoga Shastra is the sadhana. Both are kept side by side in all cases. So the third topic will be Jnana Sadhanani, and hopefully we'll come to today. I have to rush. Let me talk about the first one, which is Avatara Rahasyam. So Rahasya means the secret. Secret means something that is not understood. So we have those of us that are born in India, we are told that Krishna is an avatara, Rama is an avatara. Lots of other people are avatars. And what does it really mean? So this very brief introduction to this is given in here. Okay, so this is what is called Avatara Rahasyam. So here is the thing. Knowledge is always there with the Creator, which is Ishvara. Always there. It's not as though one day the Creator is not ignorant at one time and suddenly became wise. He's always wise. Ishvara is always there. The question is whether the knowledge is present in the people who are also creations or not. Or is it exposed to them? Is it revealed to them or not revealed to them? It's always there. Here Swami Viditatmananda had given a beautiful example that really that gave me what he said was that if you look at the ether space at the moment, without our knowledge, we don't realize that the space is full of stuff. One of the stuff in the space is electromagnetic waves. There are radio waves, there are television waves, all over. I don't know how many FM stations are there, how many AM stations are there, how many high frequency stations are there, how many televisions are there. They're all there at the moment, all over. You cannot say it is not there. But whether you can capture it in a form depends on your preparation and ability. So also the knowledge about all of this. It is there always. Vedas are always there in the totality of the whole creation. But what happens is that certain people who have become so proficient in understanding the subtlety of Vedas, to them the Vedas become real. They're like radios and televisions and so on. You will say, my goodness, I know what this is. So these are the rishis at the beginning of each kalpa that are given. And then the rishis point it out to others. And so all of a sudden this knowledge becomes understandable to us. So now, in the very beginning of the kalpa, Brahmaji, it is said, Brahmaji was almost like the first avatara of Ishvara. And Brahmaji has 4 faces, and they are synonymous with the 4 Vedas. And Brahma and Vishnu both, they actually explain the whole thing to the Sanat Kumaras and so on and so forth. Krishna is also an avatara of Vishnu. And Krishna was born as a human being consciously by Vishnu. Why was he born? We will see now in a minute. So now, those are not that important a part. But what is important for us to see is that there is complete consistency between Bhagavad Gita and the Vedas and Upanishads. It's the same person talking in both cases, in different ways. For example, what Gita has talked about is for an active householder. This is what it is meant for. Upanishads talk to everyone, particularly to the sannyasis. But Gita was talked about as a treatise for the active householders. But the message of the Gita is the same as the Vedas. Gita sometimes actually appears as though it's talking about different things. In fact, you find so many people who say, you know what the real message of Gita is? It is management of yourself. Okay. How about you? They say, no, the real reason for the Gita is that you have to fight. All right. So there are various ways people interpret what the messages of the Gita is. But they say if you want to understand the real message of the Gita, what is called Tatparya Nishchaya. This is what is called Tatparya Nishchaya. And there is a science for it. It's called Mimamsa. So what Mimamsa does is to, and by the way, the Vedas are also, they also have some messages that don't all jive together. But the Mimamsa says that all the Vedas, even though sometimes they say things differently, have the same Tatparya. And the same Tatparya is there for the Bhagavad Gita also. And what is that Tatparya? It's a very simple Tatparya. And the Tatparya is, you, the Atma, is real and free, and everything which is not the Atma is not real and not free. Atma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Atma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Atma Satyam Jagan Mithya. This is the central theme of everything. And so sometimes people say that really speaking, Gita may have some other secondary benefits, but that is the main reason for that is self-inquiry, and which is the same message for the Vedas as well. Anyway, so that's the part of it. Now a little bit of of the avatara. This is not that important, but I'll just say that. So avatara, like Krishna and a normal human being, look alike, but they are different for the following reasons. One is the cause. The cause of a human being like you and I being born is the force of our previous karmas, because we all did a number of things and they are fructifying in the current situation in the way we are. So we are under the control of karmas. Not true for the avatars. Avatara is Ishvara, consciously, purely out of the compassion that I need to do something, I need to recorrect that. The way I would say that is this. Sometimes, this is the principle of Ayurveda, because I really think Ayurveda is a great medical discipline. So where the Ayurveda is, that the human body is supposed to be healthy. And it is self-repairing. So if you have a cut, you just watch a cut. How interesting it is that the blood coagulates. There is a pain here which says, pay attention. And then it just starts to correct itself. But if the body is really out of whack, if it breaks a bone, then you need some external help. This is the principle of Ayurveda. The principle of the whole world running is very similar. Whole world should run automatically. There are good people and bad people, they fight with each other, there are democracies, different presidents come, prime ministers come, all this, so on and so forth. It all gets resolved and it happens automatically. Once in a while, it goes out of whack. And when that happens, and this is what happened in the battle of Kauravas and Pandavas, where the Kauravas were wreaking havoc, disregarding all accepted norms, they were just creating an absolute problem. They needed an external doctor. So the Ayurveda says that normally the body is working okay. Not as though that everything is required every time, no. But if exceptional problems occur, then an external force is required. So therefore, purely out of compassion, the avatars are given by Ishvara. Number two, in the nature of it, the human beings are much more involved with tamoguna and rajoguna. Tamas and rajas means that Tamas, of course, is ignorance and sloth, and Rajoguna is too much ambition, full of desire. Sattva-guna is the one which is the desirable thing for knowledge and happiness. And so in the case of avatars, their creation is Sattva-guna pradhana, which means wisdom and understanding and compassion and love. So that's the basic difference between them. Then number 3, there is a difference between how the forms are taken up. In the case of us, is what is called bhautika sharira. Bhutebhyaha. Bhautika sharira means we need a mother and a father. And the conception has to take place. This is how we begin. In the case of avatara, that is not necessary. In fact, the Christians have the same belief, which is immaculate conception. And we agree with that it can be done. And we actually think of Christ sometimes also as an avatara. It's not just meant for Rama and Krishna and so on. Any great person that changes things, Buddha, we take as an avatar. In fact, what they say is that all extraordinary human beings are avatars. Everybody is an avatara. But to look at, for example, Einstein, what an extraordinary person. Changed the whole thinking about relativity and so on and so forth. I consider him to be an avatara. Even though he is not a classical avatara in this way. But anyway, I won't go too much into it. And then the last thing is the function. The function of the human being is to exhaust the karma phala, whereas the function of the avatara is the overall good, not for himself. He has nothing to exhaust, but the overall good of the humanity is part of that. Anyway, the central theme of the Avatara Rahasyam is that the teaching of Bhagavad Gita is consistent with the teaching of the Vedas. In fact, Bhagavad Gita is sometimes called the 5th Vedas. That's why it is so highly regarded and so helpful in all cases. So wonderful. Okay. Then the second topic, as I mentioned before, is Jnana Yoga, which is given in the verses number 18 to 24. Verse number 24, which we don't have time to go over in great detail, but hopefully you will have a chance to look at it, is perhaps the crux of the Vedanta, a very difficult and a contradictory sounding verse, which says that those who see action in non-action and those who see non-action in action are the real wise people. That's it. This is the verse. You have to make some sense out of this. What? What are you talking about? It would seem that if there is something in active and I see that as an active, that is the right thing to do. And if something is not active, and for I to understand it is not active, that is also the right thing to do. How can you say just the opposite? So there is a great deal of... So paradoxical statements are very important in Vedanta. All paradoxical statements, contradictory statements, are full of them. Smaller than the smallest and bigger than the biggest. How can that be? So if you just look at that part of it, there's some vision that you have to see that explains this paradox. So for example, smaller than the smallest and bigger than the biggest. So that means something which is also in the smallest as well as the biggest. Like for example, water in an ocean. You can say water is the smaller than the smallest wave and bigger than the biggest wave. Yes. That means you have to elevate yourself to a higher level to see the truth of it. And so this is the crux of the paradox. And here this verse talks about that as well. So now, let me give you, which we have already done in the case of, if you recall, the example of electricity and the various appliances. Remember? This is an important thing to see. And so these verses, 18 to 24, basically explain the following, which I'm just citing it. I don't have time to explain it. That will come later on, hopefully, as the course progresses. But at least let me cite it here in the following way. So these are a fivefold way of looking at it, which I borrowed from Swami Paramarthananda of Chennai. He's marvelous in segmenting it in a way that it really just makes sense. It's a beautiful way to do that. So please make a note of it. Let's look at all five of them. Number one, Atma, the conscious being, in fact I should put a semicolon here. Atma, the conscious being, is not a product, part, or a property of the body. As some people believe they are. So there is always a quest in the scientific community. What is consciousness? How is it born? Is it born out of the cells of the brain? You know, sometimes apparently it looks like it. There's all kinds of thinking about it and so on. Vedanta says no. Like an electricity and the appliance have nothing to do with each other. Totally different things. Like that, the conscious being is not a part, product, or property of the body. Number one. Number two, it is an independent entity. That pervades the body, and the body also should include the mind. The body is the sthula sharira, the gross body, and the mind is the sukshma sharira. So when you say the body, in fact, it encompasses the entire structure of any living being, including physiological functions, thinking, the whole thing. Okay? So you can, when you say not part and property of the body, it also includes not part and product of the mind, everything. Number two, It is an independent entity that pervades and in fact enlivens it. You can draw a parallel between electricity and consciousness. Just like electricity pervades an appliance and enlivens it. Electricity is independent and the appliance is dependent, but there is a mixture of that in which the appliance becomes alive because of electricity. Same thing happens here. The entire body, so there are two entities. One would be called inert, which is called jada, and the other one would be called chaitanyam, which is alive. And sometimes the body looks alive. The blood is flowing, the heart is beating, there is a sense of touch. And that aliveness is not its own. It is borrowed from Atma, from the consciousness. So sometimes, so for example, the water is hot. That is not because of the nature of water. It is actually borrowed from fire. So similarly here also. So number two is consciousness is an independent entity that pervades the body and enlivens it. Number three, consciousness is not limited by the boundaries of the body. In fact, you can. It sometimes appears that my consciousness is inside my body. But if you just look at it, it's just the opposite. Your body is within your consciousness. In fact, the outer scene is also in your consciousness. So you see this. You can do this in open-eyed meditation. In the open-eyed meditation, you see in your consciousness there are people outside, things outside. There are your eyes also inside, your hands, your body, your thoughts. So it's consciousness is all pervading, and parts of the scene are outside the body. Parts of the scene are inside the body. This is the truth, not the other way around. It is not limited by the boundaries of the body. Number 4. Consciousness survives even after the body is broken. Same principle as the electricity. If the bulb fuses, has no effect on the electricity. All it means is that the bulb will no longer emanate light. The death of the body is not the death of the consciousness. Number 5, and the last one. the surviving consciousness cannot interact with the world. It just is. Why? Because to interact with the world, you need a medium of interaction. It's like one example of that would be that if the bulb fuses or any other appliance ceases to work, the electricity is not visible anymore. Not visible anymore. That doesn't mean that the electricity has disappeared, but as a visible entity, it is not there. You need another appliance to express the electricity. Of course, the example is not perfect because the electricity is still there in the wire, and you better not touch it, by the way, to feel it, because you'll get a shock of your life. The 110 is not bad, but for those of India who are 220, I don't know if you ever have, it is really shocking how powerful it is. So that example doesn't apply. And one interesting thing about consciousness is that the electricity can be turned off and on. Consciousness cannot be turned off. Because the electricity is also a certain combinations of electrons and protons that are there as an entity. So it has some form to it, very subtle form, but some form. But consciousness doesn't. This is the trick of the creation. You see, the thing is that if a thing to be there, I have to see it. You cannot say, you know what, there is a thing that no one has seen and you cannot see it. What would you conclude? That means you are describing a thing which is not there. In the Vedas, the example given is the horns of a human being. It's called asat. Or in the modern example, a square circle. It doesn't exist. So the Atma also, the consciousness also, if you cannot see it, no one can see it, then it must not be there, just like the horns of a human being. There is an exception. Consciousness is a unique entity which is always there, but not always understood or seen. I am always there. So this is what is called, in the Kathopanishad, there is a very famous vakya on this. Astiti eva upalabdhavya. Astiti eva upalabdhavya. Asti bhati priyam rupam. Asti means it is. The very essence of the Atma is I am. Let's just do a very short meditation on this. I was hoping to do a longer one, but we won't have time, so let's just do a very short meditation on just on this point. Om Namah Shivaya. Just see from your eyes of your mind, not the eyes of the eyes. That I am and I am aware. You cannot refute this. You cannot negate it. This is the basic truth about you, the conscious being. You are and you are aware. Very simple. See how obvious it is. Atma is not some mysterious thing that you have to think about. You have to discover, you have to know about it. No. Atma means I. Please see that I am. Not what I am. As what I am may differ from person to person. But look at the simplicity of the fact, I am. Even if someone argues that I am not, that person is aware of the fact that statement, I am not. So it is not possible to say I am not. I am, and I know. That is the nature of the person. Asti, asmi. Asmi means I am. Asti means the person is. ahamasmi sada bhami. I see in meditation the truth of the Atma, self-revealing. I am. What I am can be changing from one time to another, one place to another, one form to the other, but they all have the same common I am. The I am is the consciousness. It pervades through what I am. It is not limited to what I am. The what I am changes moment to moment. The cells of the body are not the same moment to moment. The experiences of the body are not the same moment to moment. But I am is the same. Just appreciate this fact. This is not esoteric, not academic. This is the reality. Also see that you are always aware. I know. That you are the nature of knowledge. I know. I am is the same as I know. What you know may be different. That you know remains the same. It was the same yesterday, last week, a month ago, a year ago, same thing. I am and I know. This is the Jnana Yoga that Gita conveys. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we'll close the class with that. There's a couple more things to talk about in the 4th chapter, and I will do that next class. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om. One doesn't feel like fielding questions after meditation. Should just sustain it as it is. Anyway, just a few words about Swami Tattvavidanandaji's visit. So I assume that you have all received anybody that doesn't know about the visit, you all know about the. Okay, so as you know, the evening discourses will be downstairs in the auditorium, and from Tuesday the 12th November we will have a session in this class which is really limited to about 40 to 50 people and requires registration, and if you have already registered, fine, but I think it's already full. But they will be live broadcast, so if you want to do that, you can listen to it at home, watch it at home, or it will be recorded and you can look at it later on. So those are the two things. And then on Sunday the 17th of November, we have a general session of question answers followed by lunch. So you please make it a point to come to that, you'll enjoy it. And if you have not listened to Swamiji before, then I think I invite you to really do come and listen to him. He's a remarkable teacher, just a wonderful, very clear about the whole thing. And you will see a lot of consistency in what this teaching is and what he's going to talk about at a really a very high advanced level. So it'll be a good opportunity for you to imbibe some further knowledge. So whatever you can, if you can do, you can please come. So, and if you can just send the flyer out to other people as well, that would be nice. More people can come and listen to him. He's a pretty very popular person, so we have not been able to get him for the last 6 years. And I really have my doubts whether he will come back here again, because this was a kind of an unusual quirk in the schedule that he made it, but I'm not sure that, but let's see. Hopefully he will come again. We'll see. All right, thank you.